Can you give me the answer on headline inflation? I don't want to know how fast you can dance. I want to know if you can answer simple, factual questions. Dr. Phelan, is annual inflation higher than wage growth today?
Thank you, Ranking Member. There has been, since President Trump took office, weekly inflation-adjusted earnings are higher now than they were the day President Trump took office. The appropriate time frame is when President Trump took office.
The question is, I just want a fact.
Inflation-adjusted wages are lower than they are now.
Today, are families getting ahead or falling behind? You got one word to answer that. What's your word? Job would be to advise President Trump on economic policy. The Council of Economic Advisors is, quote, charged with offering the president objective economic advice, not political advice, objective economic advice. So let's go through a few objective facts. Americans are spending more on everything from gas to groceries. Prices are rising faster than paychecks. And Trump's one big beautiful bill rips away health care coverage for 15 million people in order to pay for tax cuts for billionaires and giant corporations, and it adds $4.7 trillion to the national debt. And that is why we need someone who will tell the truth about the economy and not just say whatever it is the president wants them to say. So you have a PhD in economics from a very prestigious university. You've been a professor for nearly 30 years. You've taught thousands of students by this point. On paper, you look like someone who should be able to provide objective advice. So I have some questions, and quite frankly, I hope they are really easy questions for you. President Trump promised to bring prices down on, quote, day one. Is headline inflation higher today than it was in February 2025?
Thank you, Senator. Headline inflation now is certainly lower than it was during the Biden administration.
I'm sorry. Come on, let's not play this game. You heard my question. President Trump was sworn in January 2025 under the promise he would lower costs on day one. The question I'm asking is inflation, headline inflation, today higher than it was in February 2025? It's a fact question.
The 4.2% headline inflation rate highlighted here by Senator Warren was recently confirmed by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Yesterday, July 14th, the committee released the latest June CPI data, showing that high costs for food and utilities continue to keep annual inflation above average wage growth for the third consecutive month.
Thank you, Senator. There's a reason economists tend to focus on core inflation, and that is because food and energy is quite volatile.
Okay,
core inflation is lower than when President Trump took office.
We'll do core. Can you give me the answer on headline inflation? I don't want to know how fast you can dance. I want to know if you can answer simple, factual questions. That's all I'm looking for here.
Thank you, Ranking Member. I do not know exactly what the headline inflation was on January 20th, 2025.
2.8%. So answer the question. Is headline inflation higher today than it was in February 2025?
Headline inflation now, the last one was year over year, 4.2%.
Okay, so is 4.2% higher than 2.8%?
Ranking Member, yes, it is.
Oh, wow. Was that so hard? You know, you're going to be the guy called on to give real facts. So let me try another one. Dr. Phelan, is annual inflation higher than wage growth today?
Thank you, Ranking Member. There has been, since President Trump took office, weekly inflation-adjusted earnings are higher now than they were the day President Trump took office.
The question I asked you is inflation higher than wage growth right now? In other words, even if families are getting raises, on average, are they falling behind because of inflation?
Thank you, Ranking Member. I do think it's important to have an appropriate time frame when considering
Now,
anything
that's
like
your
this.
time
An
frame.
appropriate time frame is when President Trump
The
took office.
question is, I just want a fact.
Inflation-adjusted
If somebody
wages are
says to
lower than
you
they are now.
Today,
Dr. Phelan's emphasis on long-term real wage trends remains the administration's core economic defense. However, his evasion during this exchange went viral online, and his nomination to permanently chair the Council of Economic Advisors remains stalled in the Senate Banking Committee due to ongoing debate over the impact of current tariff policies.
are families getting ahead or falling behind? You got one word to answer that. What's your word?
My word is at. Real wages
At?
are
That's
higher
your
now.
one word?
Real wages
At?
are higher now
All right, let's
than they
play
were
it this
at
way.
the beginning
You've
of
already
Trump's
told me
administration.
inflation is 4.2%, right? What's the annual wage growth right now? It's just a fact
Thank you,
question.
Senator. I do not have that in front of me right now.
It's 3.4%. So let's put this one together. Is 4.2 higher than 3.4?
I will repeat what I said, which is real wage growth in this administration is positive.
It is right now, families are falling behind. And I got to say, I can keep this one up, fact after fact, but you have now made clear what your position is. And that is you can't even do the basic facts. I didn't even get to the hard questions here about what this means. I just want to start with what the facts are. These are facts that come out of the Trump administration. They're there for anybody to see. And you can't bring yourself as the person who sits there and says, I want to be the head of the Council of Economic Advisors. Oh, I'm sorry, to give objective economic advice. And you can't even say, yeah, inflation is running higher than wages right now.
And we're still going to try to keep it on behalf of the chairman to 5 minutes.
Fair enough.
This Senate Banking Committee confirmation hearing between Senator Elizabeth Warren and Dr. Christopher Phelan captures one of the defining economic debates taking place in Washington. What unfolded as a pointed exchange over inflation statistics and wage growth reflected a broader disagreement about how Americans should measure the economy's performance. Following the release of the June Consumer Price Index on July 14th, which showed annual inflation at 3.5% after reaching 4.2% in May, questions about whether wages are keeping pace with consumer prices have remained central to congressional debate. Senator Warren's questioning challenged the administration's messaging surrounding inflation and the cost of living. By pressing Dr. Phelan, a respected economist nominated to chair the Council of Economic Advisors, to address recent inflation figures and their effect on household budgets, Warren argued that economic advisors must provide objective analysis rather than reinforce political narratives. Throughout the exchange, she sought to contrast official economic messaging with the financial pressures many Americans continue to report experiencing. Dr. Phelan defended his analytical approach by emphasizing that economists evaluate multiple indicators rather than relying solely on headline inflation. He pointed to measures such as core inflation, which excludes the more volatile food and energy categories, and argued that inflation-adjusted wages should be considered when assessing overall economic performance. Warren remained unconvinced, maintaining that consumers judge the economy primarily by the prices they pay for everyday necessities. Their disagreement reflected two fundamentally different approaches to interpreting the same economic data, rather than a dispute over the underlying mathematics. Perhaps the most significant aspect of the hearing was the broader question it raised about the role of the Council of Economic Advisors. Warren argued that its chair must provide independent and objective advice to the president, even when the analysis conflicts with the administration's preferred message. Phelan maintained that his testimony reflected established economic methodology, leaving senators to determine whether he demonstrated the level of independence expected from the position. At one point, Warren concluded that, in her view, he had disqualified himself from serving as an objective advisor. Viewed in hindsight, this hearing stands as an important record of the continuing national debate over inflation, wage growth, and the presentation of federal economic data. rather than resolving those disagreements. The exchange illustrated the competing philosophies that continue to shape congressional oversight of economic policy and the standards by which presidential economic advisors are evaluated. As of mid-July 2026, Dr. Phelan's nomination remains pending before the Senate.